Now look at Part 1.
Part 1.
You will hear a student phoning to inquire about a car for sale. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 7. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 7.
Hello, can I speak to... the advert doesn't give a name.
Well, the name is Bob, and I guess this call is about the car I'm selling, right?
Yes, my name's Francis, and I'm definitely interested.
You'll like my car then. Clean, neat, nice.
What sort is it?
Oh, the original model was called an Echo. You know, like the echo a sound can make. But then they changed the name to Yaris just before I bought it. Yaris. I don't know why. I liked the old name, and it's the same car, but that's what it's called.
So, what's the colour? The ad says it's cream-coloured. Like cream, then?
Yeah, well, it's more of a yellow colour, actually.
Not cream?
No, I don't know why I said that. It's like a canary, and small like one, too.
So, what about the power? How many cylinders does it have? 4 or 6? My brother has a 6-cylinder car and says it's very powerful.
Well, this one's 4 only, but I find it fine for city driving. As long as you don't intend to drive this car interstate or across the country, it does the job fine.
That's okay. I just want the car basically for commuting to work and maybe some weekend trips. Is it 2-door or 4-door? I suppose it's not 4-door. The car's too small for that, right?
Right, just 2 doors, as you say. The front seat bends forward to allow entry into the rear.
That's fine by me. This car is just for my girlfriend and I anyway. What about accessories? Radio, CD player, anything else? Does it have an air conditioner?
Well, no, it doesn't, but I don't find that a problem. I just open the window. I mean, if you really want, you can pay to have an AC installed. Basically, the only additional feature this car has is a radio, but it's still a great deal.
That depends on the price. You say you want $12,800, right?
Yep, about that.
Well, obviously you expect the price to be reduced to an even figure, right?
Well, I don't know.
$12,000.
$12,500, maybe.
If you can lower it a bit, I'll come and have a look, okay?
Okay. Let's say $12,400, but I won't lower it any more than that. Certainly not to $12,000.
Well, if I can get that better price, I may come over this afternoon. But what year is this car? How old is it? My brother's got a 12-year-old car and it's showing problems.
Well, my car was brand new only 3 years ago, but it still looks like it's only been 1 year on the road.
Okay, that sounds good.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 8 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 8 to 10.
Can I just ask a few more general questions about this car you're selling?
Sure.
Can you just tell me why you think it's such a good deal? Of course, I won't necessarily believe you, but just tell me what you think.
You can believe me. I honestly think this is a nice car, well worth buying at the price I'm asking.
How much registration does it have left?
To be honest, not so much, but I think having lots of registration is irrelevant. It's the car you're paying for, the quality and advantages of the engine itself.
Well, what about that then?
Okay, many people like to accelerate down the freeways, right? There are a lot of speed demons out there who think quickness is all that matters, but basically, people are mostly trapped in city traffic. So one of the things I like is that because this car is small, you can put it anywhere. Say you're in the city wanting to duck into a shop. Well, you can fit this car in any little space while you go shopping or do other things, and that saves you a lot of time.
Yeah, but it's not that powerful, right?
Oh, sure, the feel of a smoothly purring six-cylinder engine attracts many people, but I compare my car to those small football players with the tight turning circles, those who can run rings around the larger players. This car is like that. It can turn this way and that way, dodge here, duck in there, sneak around corners, squeeze ahead and grab a position. That's also very useful when travelling in city traffic.
Okay, I'll think about it.
Sure, think about it, but all these advantages are sound and appeal to other buyers as well. No one holds the same car forever, so you can say exactly the same things that I just said when you want to sell the car. That will make it very easy for you to pass this car on to the next buyer.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Starting at the beginning, you can see the on-off switch just beneath the two lights. Having turned the machine on, these lights now become very important. When the light on the left has gone out, you can begin making coffee, as it means the water is now hot enough. Next to that is the water level light. If this is illuminated, it means the machine does not have enough water. It is essential that you turn the machine off and add more water the moment this light comes on, otherwise you could damage the heating element. Once you have checked that both the heater light and the water level light are off, make sure the filter holder, that's the part with the handle just under the control panel, is in place. Once you have your cups ready, it is time to press the coffee delivery switch. That's the button just above the filter holder beside the boiler meter. Remember to take a quick look at the meter as it tells you the exact temperature of the water. On both the left and right hand side of the machine, on the same level as the filter holder, you can see the steam pipes used for heating milk. These steam taps need to be cleaned regularly to avoid blocking. And finally, if you do spill any coffee, don't worry. Just make sure that the drainage pipe at the bottom of the machine is leading into a sink or a suitable waste container. As with the steam taps, the drainage pipe needs regular cleaning.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
First and most importantly, I'll tell you where you should go from tomorrow for your lectures and classes. The Health Sciences building is on the west side of the campus, opposite the library, beside the History Department. As you are probably aware, there are 6 modules to the course, which will take a year to complete. That's 2 modules each term. In the first module of this term, you will be looking at current laws with regard to health and safety in the workplace. Don't forget that as you progress through the course, you should be building your thesis. This will need to be completed by the end of the year. Coursework will also be credited to your final grade, but the most important part of the course is the thesis. Now, the final thing I want to tell you, and again you should know this, is that there will be a number of guest speakers throughout your course. They will come from a number of different medical backgrounds, but they will all be giving you their views on the relevance of health sciences in their occupations.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
You will hear a student union officer explaining about the union's functions and services to a group of new university students.
First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Hello everyone. Now here you all are, new university students. And the first question you probably have is, what is a student union? Another question is, do I have to join? Well, regarding this second question, let me say that membership used to be compulsory in the past, but that did cause some controversy, particularly from students who wanted to remain free and unaffiliated, and this university responded. So, joining up is no longer compulsory. It's totally up to you, although I'll admit there is a fairly strong obligation to join, since all students benefit from the large variety of services that we offer. We do understand, however, that many might be unwilling to join because of a supposed political slant to the union. Traditionally, student unions have been seen as being dominated by the left, and I suppose that's still true to a large extent. Here, however, at this university, our union discourages such one-sided viewpoints, and students across the whole political spectrum are welcome. Thus, if you feel that you are a conservative type, in other words, leaning to the right, you are particularly urged to join to provide a more balanced representation. Now, let me move back to the first question. What are we? We are a formal organisation, but totally independent of the educational body. We make our own rules, rent our own premises, and organise ourselves as we wish, and our mission is basically to help you. For example, do you remember how you all arrived in late February to have an orientation week? That gave you an invaluable induction into life here, right? Well, the student union organised all the festivities at the end of that. The barbecues, partying and drinking, and even the musical entertainment as well. We'll do that again on occasions, and as always, those events take place on the football ground. Now, do you have any questions before I move on?
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Now, let me tell you more about the Student Union and its basic functions. In general, there are three: social, organisational and representational. Let's look at the first one. Basically, the union provides many social outlets for you to relax and have a better life at university. If you go to our union office, you'll find a list of the many clubs and societies we have, where you can make many friends with people who share a common interest. So, after class, sit with them in the cafeteria and discuss whatever takes your fancy. We also maintain sporting facilities and even our own gym, allowing you to relieve some of that pressure and worry after a particularly hard session in the classroom. And we have some small shops and other places where you can buy clothes and sporting gear, in other words, some retail outlets. And if you flash your student union card, you'll get up to 20% discount at the bookshop. But unfortunately, there are no discounts at the union cafeteria. Sorry, no cheap cappuccinos. Finally, there's a student union newspaper and you're welcome to contribute or put in advertisements if you're buying and selling goods or textbooks. You can also place notices of a more personal nature on the notice board of the union office itself. Alright, let's move on to our more serious functions, which are helping you get through life here, as well as representing you in times of trouble. Regarding the second issue, if you have a problem or a grievance, or if you feel under pressure or depressed for reasons both inside and outside the university, for example, perhaps a dispute with your landlord or the people in your local gym, then come to us. We have a range of counsellors and helpers, and even some lawyers, who you can meet in the conference room. So, just sip a cup of tea or coffee with them and tell them your troubles, and they'll be all ears. Basically, there's every reason to join the student union, since whatever you need, whether it be social or representational, we will help you.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You will hear a talk about memory in babies and young children.
First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
We're going to look today at some experiments that have been done on memory in babies and young children. Our memories, it's true to say, work very differently, depending upon whether we are very old, very young, or somewhere in the middle. But when exactly do we start to remember things? and how much can we recall? One of the first questions that we might ask is, do babies have any kind of episodic memory? Can they remember particular events? Obviously, we can't ask them, so how do we find out? Well, one experiment that's been used has produced some interesting results. It's quite simple and involves a baby in its cot, a colourful mobile, and a piece of string. It works like this. If you suspend the mobile above the cot and connect the baby's foot to it with the string, the mobile will move every time the baby kicks. Now you can allow time for the baby to learn what happens and enjoy the activity. Then you remove the mobile for a time and reintroduce it sometime from 1 to 14 days later. If you look at this table of results, at the top 2 rows, you can see that what is observed shows that 2-month-old babies can remember the trick for up to 2 days, and 3-month-old babies for up to a fortnight. And although babies trained on one mobile will respond only if you use the familiar mobile, if you train them on a variety of colours and designs, they will happily respond to each one in turn. Now, looking at the 3rd row on the table, you will see that when they learn to speak, babies as young as 21 months demonstrate an ability to remember events which happened several weeks earlier. And by the time they are 2, some children's memories will stretch back over 6 months, though their recall will be random, with little distinction between key events and trivial ones. And very few of these memories, if any, will survive into later life. So, we can conclude from this that even very tiny babies are capable of grasping and remembering a concept. So, how is it that young infants can suddenly remember for a considerably longer period of time? Well, one theory accounting for all of this, and this relates to the next question we might ask, is that memory develops with language. Very young children with limited vocabularies are not good at organizing their thoughts. Though they may be capable of storing memories, do they have the ability to retrieve them? One expert has suggested an analogy with books on a library shelf. With infants, he says, it's as if early books are hard to find because they were acquired before the cataloguing system was developed. But even older children forget far more quickly than adults do. In another experiment, several 6-year-olds, 9-year-olds, and adults were shown a staged incident. In other words, they all watched what they thought was a natural sequence of events. The incident went like this. A lecture, which they were listening to, was suddenly interrupted by something accidentally overturning. In this case, it was a slide projector. To add a 3rd stage, and make the recall more demanding, this accident was then followed by an argument. In a memory test the following day, the adults and the 9-year-olds scored an average 70%, and the 6-year-olds did only slightly worse. In a retest 5 months later, the pattern was very different. The adults' memory recall hadn't changed, but the 9-year-olds had slipped to less than 60%, and the 6-year-olds could manage little better than 40% recall. In similar experiments with numbers, digit span...
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
What
Give it to